Almost 13 years ago, George Lucas released The Phantom Menace and started off a new trilogy of Star Wars films to give the backstory of the original saga. Now in 2012, Lucasfilm has re-released The Phantom Menace, but in 3D, and they'll re-release another Star Wars film every year for the next 5 years. Exciting, right? Well, if you look anywhere online, it looks like there's a ton of fanboy rage for these prequel films, and many Star Wars fans aren't exactly lining up before the re-release. Well, let's step back from all the fanboy rage and give The Phantom Menace an honest, objective review. Since you've all probably seen the movie before, I'll start with the 3D aspect of the film. I was pretty surprised how good the 2D to 3D conversion worked. That said, this is the first 3D conversion film I've seen. Little differences in depth between actors' bodies really sold the 3D for me. I don't know if they re-rendered the digital characters to achieve the 3D effect, but the CG characters like Jar Jar, Watto, and the battle droids to an extent looked even better than the flesh and blood actors. They actually also made a CGI version of Yoda for this release, and it looks better than ever. But also, they were sure to make it not too articulate so it wouldn't clash with Frank Oz's puppetry in the original trilogy. George Lucas has always said that he meant to put a CG Yoda in the film back in '99, but they didn't have the time and they stuck with the fake-looking puppet they had. Some fans have complained that the 3D doesn't pop out enough, but I like that it kept it subtle, where you notice and experience the added depth, but it doesn't distract you from the story. I also appreciate that they didn't add any CG aliens or droids that reach out of the screen into the audience. And yes, pod racing in 3D is actually really cool. Now for the film itself. At the core of it, The Phantom Menace has a story that's definitely worth telling. If the original trilogy is about how Luke Skywalker fights against and redeems his tyrannical Sith Lord of a father, Darth Vader, the prequels are about how Darth Vader, or Anakin Skywalker, becomes a powerful Jedi and falls to the dark side. The Phantom Menace sets that up all right. Anakin is an innocent, caring boy who comes from the humblest of circumstances, slavery. He has far more talent than a boy should, and Jedi Knight Qui-Gon Jinn picks up on that and believes he is the chosen one, the being that is destined to bring balance to the Force. The fact that he was conceived in a Christ-like fashion without a biological father supports this as well. So what's working in this movie? Back in the day, I found the Senate scenes and bureaucratic talk boring, but now that I'm older and given the current political climate, I can appreciate that aspect of the plot much more. The movie undeniably has some amazing action scenes. The Battle of Naboo at the end of the film nearly rivals the Battle of Endor in terms of adrenaline rush, and let's not forget how awesome the lightsaber fight at the end was. Back in '99, I went crazy when Darth Maul ignited a second blade on his lightsaber, and I've been twirling broomsticks around ever since. It's also got a thrilling pod racing scene, which clearly comes from George Lucas's love of racing and speed. And who can forget John Williams' Duel of the Fates, and it's easily some of his best work in movies ever. One also can't ignore the positive message of the film that the best things can come in the most unexpected places, like a 9-year-old slave boy in the middle of nowhere, or a race of seemingly simple natives, and yes, I'm talking about the Gungans. Speaking of Gungans, why do fans abhor this film so much, even going as far to call it non-canon or declare Lucas raped their childhood? Well, all the stupid, uncalled-for fanboy rage comes from the fact that most of the fans lining up to see The Phantom Menace in 1999 had really fond memories of Star Wars from their childhood, and these now older fans were expecting the same experience, and no movie could do that again. So this movie isn't an abomination like the group of fans trolling and whining on the internet make it out to be. It's really just a mediocre movie that has too big of a legacy to live up to. Well, what keeps it mediocre? The story is kind of hard to follow. The film sets up that Naboo is under an illegal invasion, and they do free the planet in the end, but in the larger picture they discover Anakin Skywalker in the second act and start a story there. They also start and end Palpatine's rise to Chancellor in the second act, and his story doesn't affect anything else in the film. And we can't leave out Jar Jar. He's mainly there to be funny, and his funny situations come from things happening to him, like getting his tongue stuck in an energy binder. The comedy between C-3PO and R2-D2 worked in the original trilogy because they had goals and stumbled or failed in reaching them. Jar Jar has no goals, he just sticks with Qui-Gon to repay a life debt, so all his unmotivated humor does nothing to advance the story. It's really easy to see how he can get annoying fast. People complain about Jake Lloyd's acting as Anakin as being extremely annoying too, and I don't see why really. While lines like, "Yippee!" really make me cringe, the complaint that he's way too upbeat has no basis. If Anakin was mean-spirited from the start, then there wouldn't really be a tragic fall to evil in the first place, and there's no way the Jedi Council could justify training him. And Lloyd really does do a nice job of portraying the innocence of youth and unconditional care that Anakin has to fall from. I'm a firm believer that given one or two more drafts of the screenplay, The Phantom Menace could be a great film, though almost nothing could fully satisfy the fans after 16 years of waiting. If they introduced Anakin and Palpatine earlier in the story and tied them in with the bulk of the plot, it would definitely help the flow of the film. And if Jar Jar, the main complaint of the movie, had a goal or a skill to make him useful, he wouldn't be the hated Gungan he is today. Let's be honest, when he brings up the Gungan army to Amidala on Coruscant, it's a good scene and it really propels their rescue operation forward. And it's good because he's useful in that scene. And they probably could have just left him on Naboo to do something like rally some troops or start an underwater resistance for the Queen to join when they get back from Coruscant. So to sum it all up, The Phantom Menace in 3D looks great and the depth really complements the story. On a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, this movie would get a 3. While it doesn't deserve all the fanboy hate and ridicule it gets, it's still a mediocre film, but with fun action and a great musical score.